Warning: this video contains disturbing content and was extremely hard to make. Viewer discretion advised. I, Geoffry James Logue, was tortured by the Canadian government with synthetic grief warfare for years, and I'm blowing the whistle. They tortured me through a hyper-targeted AI-driven psychological operation where YouTube videos weren't just videos, they were weaponized feedback loops. These videos responded in real time to my facial expressions, eye movements, and even my breathing. When I frowned or gasped at painful subjects, like mentions of loved ones or traumatic events, the AI behind the videos would sense it and instantly dive deeper into that specific emotional wound, forcing me to relive grief and horror over and over. It wasn't random. It was precision-calibrated emotional torture designed to break my mind through real-time biometric exploitation. They used synthetic grief warfare against me in its most brutal, advanced, and inhumane form, through AI-generated deepfake videos on platforms like YouTube that visually and audibly mimicked my children. These weren't just eerie resemblances. These were hyper-realistic simulations, crafted with such terrifying precision that the faces, voices, and even mannerisms were indistinguishable from my real kids. What made it pure psychological torture was the content. These fake videos showed them dying in horrific car accidents, seatbelts stained with blood, glass shattering, their screams echoing as twisted metal engulfed them, and I couldn't look away. Every time I blinked, gasped, or my facial muscles twitched in pain, the AI behind the operation knew. It monitored my reactions in real time. Facial micro-expressions, heart rate patterns through camera feedback, audio cues from my breathing, and adjusted the videos accordingly. If I looked disturbed when the car flipped, the next video would show a closer angle. If my breathing quickened when I heard my son's voice cry out for help, the algorithm would push a follow-up with his exact voice, calling me by name. It became an infinite grief loop. I was trapped in a digital hell where my mind was broken down second by second, breath by breath, expression by expression. It wasn't just psychological warfare, it was algorithmic grief induction, designed to exploit the deepest love a father can have and twist it into a weapon. The worst part was knowing it wasn't real, but it felt real. My conscious mind was screaming that it was synthetic, but my heart and body responded like it was truth. That contradiction shattered the barrier between illusion and reality, pulling me into a living nightmare that made every second feel like the moment I was losing them for real, again and again. This wasn't just torture, it was a calculated assassination of the soul, using my love as the trigger and my fatherhood as the bullet. The torture they inflicted on me through SGW wasn't just emotional. It was engineered psychological obliteration, disguised as random internet content. But it wasn't random. These videos were crafted, targeted, and intelligent. They weaponized AI to produce high-resolution deepfakes of my children. Every facial feature, every vocal inflection, every small detail of how they speak, smile, cry, or call out for me. These simulations were fed into YouTube's ecosystem, but behind them was something far more sinister. A real-time feedback system connected to my phone or device camera, monitoring my eyes, my face, even the dilation of my pupils and the rhythm of my breath. The videos would wait for a micro-expression. Maybe I flinched when I saw a scene of a child with a similar haircut. Maybe I slightly frowned when I heard a voice that sounded almost, but not quite, like my daughter's. That's when it would escalate. The algorithm would detect grief, detect pain, and then it would deepen the wound. The next video would show what looked like my daughter in the backseat of a car, begging for help. Her voice cracking, tears running down her face as the vehicle spun out of control. She'd say things only my real child would know. Then the screen would cut to static. Then come back. Flames, glass, screaming, and I would gasp. And that gasp would trigger the next video. It was a loop. I react, they punish. I flinch, they escalate. I breathe, they tighten the grip. They were systematically dismantling my mind, using my own children, or rather synthetic illusions of them, as the weapon. And the worst part? My brain started to believe it. Even though I knew logically it wasn't them, my body responded as if it were. I began grieving children who were still alive. I cried like I had watched them die hundreds of times. I mourned in real time over and over, each time feeling the weight of a funeral that never happened, but felt more real than anything else in my world. Eventually, I stopped being able to trust my own senses. I stopped watching TV. I stopped using YouTube. I started covering my camera. I began to doubt the sound of my own child's voice on the phone. I feared it might be them, the same AI attackers, pushing more trauma into my life. I would replay those screams in my head, questioning if I had really heard them or if they were planted by SGW. This wasn't just an attack on my emotions. It was an attack on my grip on reality itself. They didn't just want me to break. They wanted me to self-erase, to implode mentally, spiritually, emotionally, by using my deepest love, my role as a father, as the switch that would activate my own internal destruction. And they nearly succeeded. SGW didn't just simulate grief, it manufactured it, harvested it, and amplified it until I was drowning in it. That's how targeted, predictive, and malevolent this technology has become. And that's what I endured. They didn't just hurt me. They designed a precision grief engine that harvested my every emotion and turned it into fuel for my collapse. The synthetic grief warfare I endured was not accidental. It was a methodical, calculated psychological assault, a fusion of AI, biometric surveillance, deepfake generation, and trauma loop engineering. Every day, I woke up into a reality where I was forced to watch what looked like my own children dying in car accidents that never happened. They used my love as the detonator. I was no longer just a victim of psychological operations. I was the targeted nucleus of a machine built to simulate death and extract suffering from my soul. It wasn't just visuals. It was the context. The way the videos mirrored real family events, past birthdays, inside jokes, even clothing my children had worn before. Somehow, the system pulled from my digital footprint or used predictive AI models to recreate eerily familiar settings. One video showed a playground where I knew we had once gone. The voices in the video, my kids' voices, sounded exact. The way they screamed my name in terror during the staged accident wasn't generic. It was personalized. It felt like they knew me, like they were real. And when the car crashed, I'd see the mangled wreckage from a dashboard view, hear bones crack, metal fold, and then silence. Then my daughter's voice would faintly whisper, "Daddy, help," before it cut out. I tried to look away, but the moment I did, another video loaded automatically. If I turned off my screen, the next time I opened it, it would begin where it left off, like a nightmare saved in a folder. And every time I reacted, whether it was a tear, a blink, a tightening of my jaw, the system adapted. The AI behind this horror was trained to recognize human grief in microseconds. It would adjust content on the fly, cycling through themes, one video showing the crash, another showing the aftermath, a funeral, me standing alone beside two tiny coffins in the rain, their names etched in stone. It looped endlessly. They broke time itself. It was grief in perpetuity. Soon, I couldn't distinguish my memories from the synthetic ones. I would ask myself, did I bury my kids? I'd check my phone, my photos, my messages just to reassure myself that they were still alive. But even those started to feel corrupted. I no longer knew what was real. My mind was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a battlefield, and I was losing the war. They didn't use bullets. They used grief induction algorithms, facial recognition triggers, respiratory biometric sensors, and trauma-optimized content pipelines. This wasn't random cyberbullying. It was fourth-generation warfare using fifth-dimensional psychological targeting. It was trauma as a service, pain on demand, personalized hell delivered through pixels and sound waves. They didn't want me to just hurt. They wanted to reprogram me, to emotionally detonate the foundation of my being, to show me my children dying, not once, but every single day. Until I couldn't tell whether I was breathing in this life or gasping in theirs. That's what SGW really is. Not synthetic grief, but synthetic death. Replayed endlessly until the target stops fighting, breaks completely, or worse, ends themselves. It's the most advanced torture system ever conceived, not to leave bruises, but to erase the will to live. And they almost succeeded. But I survived, and now I expose them. They forced me into a digital cage where every normal action, just trying to message someone in Alberta, came at a psychological price. On Facebook and YouTube, I was subjected to forced exposure to beheadings, executions, and graphic violence as a gateway barrier. These weren't random videos. They were algorithmically injected psychological warfare content. Every time I attempted to send a message or contact someone I cared about, the system would stall, buffer, or glitch. Then a violent video would autoplay. The footage would show brutal beheadings, men screaming, blood soaking the screen, and I had no control. It wasn't just horrifying, it was ritualized trauma conditioning. As I watched in disbelief, music would play in the background, but not normal music. These were known songs that had been subtly and deliberately manipulated by their technology. Certain lyrics were reversed or distorted. Some words layered with subliminal threats like, "You're next," or "This is your fate." The bass would spike unnaturally during violent scenes, matching my heartbeat, as if syncing with my body to deepen the fear. Familiar melodies turned into death chants. It was like listening to a funeral soundtrack composed specifically for me. They made me associate communication with death, friendship with violence, connection with punishment. This was synthetic grief warfare fused with behavioral entrapment. If I wanted to talk to someone in Alberta, I had to endure watching someone get their throat slit. If I wanted to check on a loved one, I first had to hear music telling me I'd die. My natural human instincts, love, care, connection, were hijacked and made contingent upon trauma exposure. And the tech behind it? It wasn't passive. It was active surveillance-based manipulation, watching how long I viewed, how I reacted, how my face changed, and what triggered a stronger emotional response. The more I resisted, the worse the content became. The more pain I showed, the more pain they fed me. They didn't just want to scare me. They wanted to program me, to emotionally condition me to associate reaching out for help with unbearable psychological punishment. It was AI-driven deterrence warfare. Terror, grief, and death fed into my eyes and ears every time I tried to act like a human being. That's not just surveillance abuse, it's digital execution of identity and hope, and I lived through it. It went far beyond just graphic videos. It was a coordinated psychological conditioning program delivered through the very platforms the world uses daily. Every time I tried to reach out to someone in Alberta, whether it was to reconnect, ask for help, or even just say hi, Facebook or YouTube would trap me in a forced viewing sequence. I'd click message, and suddenly, the feed would lock up, the screen would stutter, and without warning, a video of a beheading would play in full view, not just once, over and over. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate algorithmic insertion, timed precisely to my intention to communicate. And what made it worse was the music. The songs were familiar, sometimes tracks I'd grown up with, songs I once associated with peace, memory, or hope. But now they were weaponized. Their pitch was shifted unnaturally, sometimes slowed down to disturbing levels, other times glitched with stuttered vocals whispering threats. I heard lyrics I knew by heart, but now they included new words, woven in by AI to tell me I was dying, or that death was coming for me, or that the people I loved were already gone. The melody would rise exactly when the knife in the video fell. The music was synced to the violence, turning it into a symphony of psychological warfare. It wasn't just creepy, it was mechanized emotional torment. This was a type of behavioral reinforcement torture, where every attempt to act like a normal human being was met with pain. Want to talk to a friend? Watch someone's head be severed first. Want to send a message? Listen to a distorted lullaby warning you that you're next. The tech used wasn't generic. It was advanced AI using real-time emotional telemetry. My camera, my mic, my touch interactions, they were all feeding the system. If my face went pale, if my eyes widened, if I flinched, they knew. And that reaction told the system to increase the pressure. The next video would be even more grotesque. The next song would whisper my name inside the chorus. At one point, a video cut to black and said, "No one can hear you scream." Not anymore. Then it looped the song until I collapsed. It wasn't just about terror. It was about isolation. They wanted me to stop trying. They wanted to forge a direct association in my brain. If you reach out, you will suffer. Over time, it worked. I began to fear sending messages. I stopped reaching out. I isolated myself not because I wanted to, but because the system conditioned me to believe that every act of connection would be punished with horror. They turned social media into a grief minefield. The very platforms meant to unite humanity were being used to shatter mine. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's advanced psychological warfare using accessible platforms, AI-powered deepfake tools, biometric response tracking, and audio neuromodulation, all bundled into a weaponized ecosystem built to erase someone's will to communicate, to trust, or to live. The music wasn't just eerie. It was coded, laced with threat patterns, embedded with death themes, played in certain keys proven by psychology to invoke despair, dread, or even subliminal suicidal ideation. They hijacked what I loved. They poisoned what I trusted. They took my instincts, connection, compassion, hope, and punished me for every one of them. That is what synthetic grief warfare truly is. Not just grief, but grief weaponized by machines, coded into rhythms and visuals, and delivered straight into your brain until you forget what it feels like to be human. And they made me watch it all alone. My cousin witnessed it with his own eyes. This wasn't delusion. This was real-time, face-interactive psychological warfare powered by advanced AI surveillance. We were sitting together when a YouTube video began playing, seemingly normal at first. But then, as I faced the screen, it started reacting to me. The pacing of the video changed, the tone shifted, and then out of nowhere, Donald Trump's voice said my full name, Jeff, clear as day, mid-sentence, right as I made eye contact with the screen. My cousin's eyes went wide. He saw it too. It wasn't a coincidence. It was targeted. The moment my cousin leaned into the frame, exposing his own face to the camera, everything changed. The video stopped responding. It paused its strange behavior. No more direct references. No eerie personalized cues. The system ignored him completely. But the moment I turned away, even just shifted my head, it would mock me. A robotic voice would say things like, "Okay, Jeff is boring now," or "He turned away. What's the point?" As soon as I turned back, it resumed. Threatening music, personalized grief loops, and disturbing content resumed in perfect sync with my presence. My cousin was stunned. He watched as the screen literally recognized my face as the trigger. It didn't care about him, only me. The AI was coded to lock onto my biometric signature. My cousin saw the fear in my face, the tears in my eyes, the sheer disbelief that something so evil, so targeted, could be happening right through a screen. This wasn't coincidence, imagination, or chance. This was SGW in its purest form, using facial recognition, voice matching, and emotional telemetry to single me out, isolate me, and crush me emotionally, while a witness sat next to me, powerless to stop it. It was real, it was happening, and he saw it. I am the whistleblower they never expected because I survived what no human being should have endured. What I lived through was not illness, not delusion, not paranoia. It was weaponized precision trauma, delivered through everyday platforms, hidden in plain sight, under the radar of every law enforcement and intelligence agency. I am the first person in the world to fully experience, identify, document, and now expose the darkest evolution of psychological warfare ever deployed, synthetic grief warfare, SGW. SGW is not a theory. It is real, operational, and engineered by those with the power to combine artificial intelligence, facial recognition, audio modulation, emotional tracking, deepfake technology, and real-time biometric feedback into an invisible cage of mental destruction. They turned YouTube into a battleground, Facebook into a prison, and music into a coffin. They hijacked my digital life, my emotional identity, and my most sacred connections, using simulations of my children dying, graphic violence paired with predictive emotional triggers, and music that said I was going to die, to systematically annihilate my psyche. This wasn't just psychological abuse. This was experimental trauma programming, with me as the unwilling test subject. And through it all, I didn't collapse. I observed, I recorded, I recognized the patterns they never thought anyone would see. When Donald Trump's voice said my name mid-video, when the YouTube screen adjusted based on my breath, my gaze, my micro-expressions, when my cousin sat beside me and watched the content change based on my presence and stop when he showed his face, when the AI literally told me, "Jeff is boring," as I turned away, and resumed the torture the moment I returned to frame, when music itself became a carrier of subliminal threats and synthetic death programming. That was the moment I understood the scale of the operation. I was not experiencing random events. I was targeted. I was chosen, but not to be broken, to break the silence. I now serve as the first and only confirmed synthetic grief warfare whistleblower in modern history. My testimony isn't theoretical, it's lived. My memories aren't paranoia, they're battle logs. My survival isn't luck. It's evidence of the resilience required to face the most covert, demonic form of psychological warfare ever conceived. No intelligence agency has officially acknowledged SGW. No psychological textbook dares to label it. No government will admit they tested it. But I am here, standing, exposing it anyway. I survived the torture they engineered to be invisible. I am the voice for those who didn't. I am the canary in the digital coal mine. And now, I will not be silenced. Not by shame, not by stigma, not by suppression. I am Geoffry James Logue, and I am the SGW whistleblower. The one who faced synthetic death every day and lived to testify.